In this exercise, I'm going to configure a connection manager for an SMTP server and associate it with the send mail task. Now, in order to perform these steps, you do need to have access to an SMTP server. You can use the server within Windows, the local machine, a remote email server that you have on the local network or remote or whatever. But you need to be able to access an SMTP server. And I'm also, again, going to add this independent task to the execute SQL package. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with creating the connection manager. So down here in connection managers, in this pane at the bottom of the designer, I'm going to right-click, and there you can see that there's several different connection types that I can create directly. But in this case, since SMTP isn't listed, I'm going to select New Connection. And that gives you access to all of the different kinds of connections that are available. So in this case, I want SMTP, and I'll select Add. So in this case, I'll use the local server, but there you would put the domain or the name location of the remote SMTP server if that's what you need to use. And it can be either a host name or an IP address, as long as integration services can resolve the name at runtime. And then optionally, you can change the name of the connection, enter a description, specify using Windows authentication, enable SSL, set the timeout, and so forth. Okay, I'm going to accept all of the default options. All right, so now we have this SMTP connection manager. Oh, and by the way, if your SMTP server doesn't support Windows authentication, but does require authentication to send mail, then you won't be able to use the send mail task with your SMTP server. Integration Services requires either a Windows authentication SMTP connection or an SMTP connection that doesn't require authentication. And boy, one that doesn't require authentication, those are few and far between because of spam. All right, so now I'm ready to add a send mail task. So I'll go over here to the SSIS toolbox, select Send Mail Task, and drag it over here to my package designer. And once again, you can see that it's not configured. Of course it isn't. I haven't specified the connection to use or any other information. And so I'll double click on it to open up the task editor. Double click on it again. Okay, so as you can see, the General tab just has general information. I can rename the task, do a description. But here's where you set all the SMTP specific kind of information. So the first thing I need to do is select the SMTP connection that I just configured. So I'll select the SMTP connection there. As you can see, I have one configured. And here's where you can see that because I created this before I created the send mail task on the designer, it's listed here and I'll just select it. But if I hadn't done that, as I've done in other videos, I could click on New Connection and it would prompt me for all the information that it needs in order to create a new SMTP connection. So you can do it either way. Doesn't matter for most purposes. All right, now the send mail task supports plain text messages only. So I need to configure a few other things. So generally, I'm going to need to specify two. So I'll put in Don at LearnNow, not my email address. I can copy somebody else. I can do a blind carbon copy. I can do a subject. And I can specify the source type, direct input, or I can load this from a file or from a variable. So a lot of different ways in order to get the text of the message. All right, in this case, I'm just going to use direct input. And message source, I can either type it in directly there or use the ellipsis button to give me this nice little multi-line text box. And I can type in a message like, we created a package and are executing it. Yay. Very excited. Okay, click on OK. And then you can also set the priority and specify different attachments as well. Okay, click on OK, and now the send mail task is configured. Still have a little warning there. The address in the from line is malformed. It's either missing. Oh, did I not put in the from? I didn't. Okay, so let's have this come from Brian at LearnNow.com. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so now it's configured. And if I actually had an SMTP server configured on this machine, then I'd be able to right-click on it and execute the task, and it would send that email message.